welcome back. It's Christine again with the Artist Pod, and today we'll be talking about how to draw a mandrill. As always, I'm using a Wacom Intuos Pro tablet, and I'm drawing straight into Photoshop. So, let's get arting. Alright, so here's the mandrill. I'm gonna get started with just this little bit of dark brown right up on the head. Right, so that'll be nice and quick. Just one stroke in between the other. They have a lot of interesting colors. Red and blue on the nose. And then, that's really the brightest. Kind of a orangish beard. It seems pretty interesting. Alright, so, okay. Now we have the other fur. So they seem to have this little bit of dark fur patch on their head. That's why I did that. And then they have kind of this I don't know, olive color, brown, like a tanny olive brown or whatever for the rest. Before we get to the bare skin on the face. Except down here where it becomes orange, and I didn't really mark that, so I just kind of have that in my head. Right, so this is still just a sketching step, right? I've talked about that before. If you watch my videos, I do this other little sketching step. So I'm going to finish out this color, right? It's just one stroke in front of the other. It's pretty easy. They have nice long hair, so it makes it a little quicker. And you can kind of see that I'm rotating down, right? As I come around, my strokes are rotating down. You wouldn't have to really worry much about line conflicts here because you have, the face that would be blocking. And then somewhere right around in here would transition to the orange beard, so kind of marking that off. And then it'll be the same thing on the other side, so I'm going to finish that out and I'll be right back. Might adjust all of this down, but for now. A little bit of that orange beard. Right, so that's just kind of coming off down here. On both sides, and then it would be straight down. There's also white whiskers, so some of this will be toned down when I add the white on the face, which I won't do until the very end. White, I don't think they're called, I think they're called whiskers. I don't think they're called whiskers. I think they are called whiskers. Okay. So then we get into the interesting coloration where we have, they're very bright. So this is all skin on the face, right? So you have this blue on the sides that have kind of these ridges in them. Right, so you'll have these deep ridges where the blue is, and it runs into the red. And that's going to be on both sides, all of these little ridge sections all the way down to here, all that blue. So I'm going to finish out the blue and I'll be right back. And then we have red. And that's kind of all over the face. Right, so it's up in here, it's all the details by the eyes, down the nose. They are very, very colorful. Now, here we would need to worry a little bit more about, I was going to say eye conflicts. That's not at all what we need to worry about. We do need to worry about line conflicts. So right, it's all through here. The fur would be over it. So when we do highlights and shadows, I'm probably going to do, or I could just change the layer order. That would work too. But the fur would be over it, so we would probably do the, you want the skin first to layer up, and then the fur would be pushing in to where it would be taking over certain spots. Obviously, you'd have highlights and shadows in all of this. And you know, it's basically the rest of the top part of the face, although I have seen some where this is brown, so I might take the brown that I did for this little strip here and have it on the edge of the mouth. I'm probably going to do that. But then I'll have, you know, all the way down the nostrils and all of this to be red, so I'm going to finish the red and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'll take that brown, like from up there, and do the edge here. Nothing big, it just kind of will fade into the red. We're doing pretty good. And then I think the rest of the chin's in white, and or it looks white because of the whiskers. I'm not really sure. So I'm going to do it in white. Now I did this a little bit of the hard way. You know, then down the nose, it will be nice because it helps show the ridge in the nose, but really it would have been a lot easier to come straight down instead of over like that. But, you know, sometimes you want a good effect. And if I want it easy, I guess I wouldn't be doing it in this style with a whole bunch of individual lines. Because, gosh, this is not the easy way to draw. Gives you a lot of control, though. Gives you tons of control. I'm going to go back to this dark color. See, this is what I don't know. This should be like a taller thing, but now that I've started drawing, I'm just nudging everything. I'm basically counting down 29 so that I can line everything back up. I'm nudging every layer down to give the top bit a little bit more oomph. That was probably the difficult way to do it, but you know. Okay, so then we're going to give this a little bit of an extra height. So we take away the sketch, that's what we have so far. And then we're going to start adding the highlights and shadows. I'm going to have the light source coming from above and to the right. As always, it's above and in front of, not behind or next to. So we're going to get started. I'm just leaving this in place so that I can see. Now, all edges are in shadow. So like the top edge here would be in shadow, that's backed off pin pressure. But everything else in this particular layer is going to be highlight. And the reason I did this instead of like black, it's hard to tell honestly what this color is supposed to be on them. Whether it's supposed to be black or if it's supposed to be like a brown. So I chose a brown because I can put full pin pressure and, you know, fill it in, but it's possible that it's not actually supposed to be a brown. But that's what I think that's close enough, basically. I don't think I'm making a decision that is not true to a mandrill. I was going to say a mandrill. I don't know what I was trying to say. Okay. Rest of this will be in highlight, so I'm going to finish this out in highlights. One quick thing before I do that though, and this will apply for everything, you know, as I'm connecting highlight to shadow, what I'll often do at the connection point is just add a lot more lines. That way my lines remain thin instead of big and blocky, because when I'm putting full pin pressure, the lines get thicker. And because they get thicker, it can make this transition a little harder. So all I'm going to do is add more lines in. So anytime I'm connecting highlight to shadow, that's how I'm going to make the connection. Add more lines, and then as I, you know, bring it down, right, as I bring this down a little bit, now I lean into the full pin pressure, and we get all of that in there. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this section, and I will be right back. Since I'm on this color, might as well go ahead and do the mouth, right? So there would be an edge here too, right? Because all edges are in shadow. There's going to be a gap drop down from the mouth down to the fur, and then on the back side you're probably going to have a lot of shadow because it's just turned away, right? You have that rounded section and it's just kind of turned away from us. But then, you know, rest of this would be highlight. So that's back to that, you know, more lines slash full pin pressure, however you want to add the highlight. Just make sure it's like nice and blended in. So that's nice and quick, and then we'll transition. I guess we should do the skin first. That's what I said I was going to do when I was talking about it earlier, so I suppose I should probably do that. Because we'll want the fur to be over the skin. Alright, so then we'll get the blue. The blue, right, you have some sections here, like right along here. This is shadow. It goes into like a recess. You have shadow on all of those connection points where all of those recesses were. I'm just trying to figure out where all of those are. And then in between all of that, I have to put the layer back on. I was hoping to do it without the sketch, but that's fine. Have to probably fix some things if I do it with the sketch on. Right, so all of that, and then potentially a little bit, again, I think, well, maybe not as much up here, but in some places there'd be a drop down, so just that edge, a little bit of shadowing, nothing big. Okay, and then once again highlight all the way to the edge, but not where the dip would be, right? So if I take that off, there'd be a clear dip. And see, this would be all the way to the red. Now, on the other side, you know, you have the same thing. All these sections you would have shadow for sure, where you have the valley in between them. But you know, the backside, you're looped over. You have this nose that's kind of jutting over. Very long nose. And it's turned away from the light source, right? So you would have a little bit more of these tips in shadow. So that would be in shadow for sure. A good portion over here. Right, just because it's turned away from light source, so it wouldn't be catching that. And then might even have a little bit where the nose is coming down after I get these all kind of done. Right, so right where it's connecting into the nose, there's actually probably a little bit here of shadowing because it's raised up, right? So there probably would be some blocking. And then playing the highlights kind of by ear at that point, I'm just going to fill in the rest of that. That's going to be easier. Because you want the highlights to kind of balance where they're hitting. I mean, and by that I mean you want it kind of uniform all the way down on the same side, right? So you'll have some highlighting, right, where there's that gap. It's still turned towards the light source. The nose hasn't fully blocked it yet, and then of course as you go in between the different things, that would go back into shadow, and then once again highlight. And then back into shadow where the dip is, highlight up to a point, and then backing that back off. Whereas the highlight on this side would push all the way to the nose, not so much on this back side here. Would not push all the way to the nose. So I'm just filling that in, and once I get the last one here, we'll take that sketch layer off. Might still need it, but you can see what that does. Creates the dip in the face, and then we're sort of backing these off as we come down to less and less. But I do need it off in order to make sure, right, you can see here, I want to make sure this comes all the way to the edge. And I'll probably, well, we'll be adding highlights, so that might not matter. Right. And then back over here where the rest of this will be in highlight, and again pushing all the way up to the red on this side. The gap in light source is only where the dip is happening, in between the blue. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this side of blue, and I will be right back. And then, you know, you can change how deep these look by changing how light or dark, you know, the dips are. I actually think they're fine, but if I wanted to lighten them up, I can just add more lines, brighten them up, and then the ravine in between each ridge would be less and less. Okay. So now we'll do the red, and then we can get to the rest of the fur color. So I'm actually going to do the whole red in shadow, which is just light pen pressure, just so that I can sort out, you know, going down the nose, that'll make it easier to add light where I want it to, and I'll be right back. Okay. Now, to get the brown on the eyes, not the red that I mistakenly sketched in. So we're just going to draw over, see how this looks. We're just going to draw over and see how this looks. So there's an eyelid, right? So there'd be some highlighting there. And then it would go into shadow. And then underneath the eye, you're going to have a little bit of burst of light underneath. And then, you know, their faces can be a little wrinkly. Just adding the brown on top. Hopefully, the brown on their faces can have a little bit of a red twinge, so I'm hoping that's good enough. Since I messed up just a little bit. It's not a hard fix if I decide to actually fix it instead of just doing what I'm doing right now, but I think this can still work without having to do that. Right, so we'll have, you know, another burst of light. Now, where the fur is pushing up, there probably would be some shadowing. You know, it goes right up to the edge of fur, but the fur is going to push out and away, so there's probably some shadowing there. I'm going to leave that little red strip down the middle of his forehead. And then we'll do the same thing over here, right? Eyelid. Highlight. It goes into shadow as it goes against the eye, though, on top. On the bottom, it's the opposite of that, right? Goes into shadow on the backside. Highlight underneath the eye. And then, you know, some highlighting on the cheek as well as some shadowing, because they'll have a lot of wrinkles, so you know you can mimic wrinkles by just leaving gaps in that. And then shadowing as the nose dips down in the brown. Right, highlighting on this front side and down and up, but again leaving that slight gap. And then going into shadow, much like our eyes, right? Going into shadow on the back side. And then filling in any gaps that we've left from there. You know, like the eyelid, that's a pretty dramatic eyelid there, doesn't need all that. I'm gonna go ahead and get the orange chin in, and then the rest is going to be just that other brown, well, plus the white whiskers, which we'll get to that when we get to that. Obviously. Right, so shadow on the back side, and you'd probably have a bit on the face. We're going to push some of this into his chin. I think that's fine. Especially the way that, you know, a lot of animals like this, monkeys, etc., will have kind of their, you know, bit of fur coming off their chin, a beard in a beard in essence. But all edges and shadows, so once again, you know, as we come down, because we would now start going into highlight on some of that. But as we come down, shadow, there's depends on how forward the beard is. The beard is like under and pushed back so that the chin is casting a shadow. There'd be shadow. But I don't think it is. I actually think it's forward and off the chin, in which case it wouldn't be casting all that much of a shadow. Just on the back side like we have over here. Right. So then the rest of this is highlight, but I'm going to play a little bit of it by ear to see how it looks as I start drawing it in. Right, so we're going to have blend it in just like we do elsewhere. So that more strokes, not more pin pressure. And again, just coming straight off of the chin. And I think, yeah, I'm going to do it this way where I'm just adding more strokes. I'm not going to do more pin pressure for this because I think it's going to blend better with the thinner strokes. So I'm going to finish up this orange and I'll be right back. And now for that final color before we get into the eyes. Again, pretty straightforward, right? We have, and this one won't be pushing in or going over like the other was. So we are, we're going to have shadow on this backside, and you have the shadow of the nose pushing forward, so all of that, and shadow over here. All edges in shadow. So, you're going to have the edge over here, but it's going to be in highlight all the way over here. As opposed to this, which has a shadow because the nose pushing forward would block some of this fur as it comes down until we start getting to like under the eyes where this would no longer be the case. Fur is going to be pushing forward, so this wouldn't be in shadow anymore. But you still have kind of the back edge that would be turning there. Kind of, they're human enough like that you would shadow them with the same kind of consideration. So their faces, their eyes are forward facing. Their faces, other than the nose, is forward facing. You would have shadowing in kind of the same way. Minus the fact that it's fur, and with fur, you get away with a little bit more. Hair with fur can shift and change and push forward and catch light, whereas skin is just flat against us. Right, you can see I'm making a pretty deep shadow on this backside. And then again against the nose, and then leaving a gap where that's going to be highlight. Yeah, and then just getting the edges in for shadow, and then yeah, the rest will be highlight. So I'm going to finish out this color, and I will be right back. We're doing pretty good. So I'm going to add the white whiskers. It's just all like down in here. And so that's just right. It's not full pin pressure, but it's short strokes like we have been doing. Light pin pressure, of course, it being white means it's going to pick up that better. And then it's on the, it's on the top lip, so. Well, it's probably also on the bottom. But it starts on the top lip. Right, we'll go up just that little bit. Mindful of less strokes as I get to that shadowed side. Right, and then I'm going to add just a few underneath, coming off the chin in a different spot. I'm just adding some flare. Right. Yeah, so you can still see where the chin is. I'm just debating on if it's too much. I could do less. Almost like it takes up too much real estate there. Let's try that again. Maybe with some more deliberate whiskers instead of just kind of going haywire. also possible that they're only off to the side because this looks more right than what I was doing. You know, the things you learn. The nice thing about digital art, right, is we can experiment, adding just a little bit more flare to this side, brightness to this side, because it's on, you know, the highlight. And it brings some hair forward, but not as much. Okay. I feel like that looks better. Now for the eyes. So I'm going to start by drawing in the pupils. And you want to trend it more towards the center than you think you do, so that it'll look like it's looking at you. If you push it like towards the middle, it can look like it's looking just off. So I usually don't do that. And then we're going to circle out the eyes, right, by following the top eyelid. Same thing on this side, right? So as it goes down, we'll go down, but I don't really want to go lower than the corner of the eye. I do want to make sure I'm higher than that. And then just encircle it, right? Oh, not like that though. It's a bad circle. More like that. So we're doing this very lightly at first on both sides, and then we'll add the shadows and highlights. Right, okay, so there's the first one, right? So if I back out, yeah. And the second one isn't lined up, so I'm going to readjust. Pull it a little down, maybe a little lower. Okay. Same idea though, right? Come up, and then you follow the curve of the eyelid down, and hopefully you're high enough that you're actually following the curve down instead of not. And then the same thing on this side, but we're going to cut the corner off, because like humans, they have little like fleshy things. I still don't know what they're called. I've talked about them years ago, right? When I was drawing it. Little fleshy things on the inside of our eyes. Yeah, whatever that is. Anyway. Right, so I'm going to finish this eye and I'll be right back. Now we are going to take the elliptical marquee tool. I'm going to come in here and clean up our pupil. Right, so I'm going to erase out any extra lines coming in there, and then I'm going to inverse it. So select inverse, selects everything back, and I'm going to just clean up the edges along the pupil. Right, eyes are one of the first things we look at, so getting the pupil nice and like circular is important. It's easier to do this if you change the direction of your stroke. So then I'm going to select inverse it back, reselect the elliptical marquee tool, and drag it to the other side, where I'm going to do the same thing. Right? Erase out any extras, inverse it, and fill in. And then deselect. And then I'm just going to fix my angle here. And it matches more what I did on the other side. Okay. Now for the highlights. So light source coming from above and to the right, so that means there is going to be a burst of light against the pupil on the opposite side of the light source and all the way underneath, but better than what I just did. No lumpy pupils for us. Right, all the way underneath. And then the same thing on the other side. Opposite side, down all the way underneath. Okay, and then there's going to be highlight on the side of the light source all the way underneath as well. Right, so we'll just connect them together. And as it goes towards the center of that pupil, it would go into shadow. If it comes to the edge, it would go into shadow. And as it comes up here to the edge, it would go into shadow. But all this in between would be highlight. And then fade that out. And if we need to brighten it up, we can just add more strokes. Right, bring it a little closer to the pupil, but that pupil on that side's going into shadow. And then we'll add a little bit, we're still going to add some strokes to this back side. Brighten it up a lot, but it's not going to be in the full highlight that the rest of it is in. Make sure it's all blended in. That's basically what we need to do, is blend it so that it all looks seamless. Or as, seamless as you can get when you're drawing in my style. Right, and you can see I can make tweaks, right, if I want to brighten that up. Just add more lines. Okay, that's one side. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other, and I'll be right back. Now we're not quite done yet though, so we're going to add one more thing. I'm going to change my color to white. I'm going to take the elliptical marquee tool, come in here with a little circle. Make sure I'm solidly in the highlight. Maybe a narrower circle. Don't have a whole lot of space. Alright. And then we're going to fill it with the foreground color. Drag it over and do the same thing on this side at roughly the same height. It's the light flare. It's one of the most important parts of adding in the eyes. And there we go. A mandrill. Alright, so that's how you draw a mandrill. I hope that was helpful. In the floating nether next to me I have other videos of art tutorials I have done, and I will see you all soon. Thank you so much. Take care.